In the world of WWE, where every move is carefully choreographed and every impact demands absolute precision, there are still superstars who make their peers uneasy the moment they step into the ring. Whether it's due to an overly aggressive style, a fiery temperament, or simply a lack of control, these wrestlers have left behind a long trail of injuries and controversy. They didn't just intimidate their opponents. They made fans question where the line between performance and reality truly lies in this brutal sport. Let's dive right in. Wrestling Sphere, go! Stan Hansen, the Blind Fury, who struck fear into everyone he faced. In professional wrestling, few names embody raw power, chaos, and unfiltered violence quite like Stan, the Lariat, Hansen. He was one of the few American wrestlers to achieve legendary status in Japan, becoming a revered icon and a Hall of Famer. But for those who shared the ring with him, Hansen wasn't just a legend, he was a nightmare come to life. The issue was simple. Hansen was severely nearsighted, to the point where he could barely see without his glasses. And, of course, he couldn't wear them during matches. That meant every strike he threw was a literal blind shot, with no certainty of whether it actually hit its mark. He became infamous for delivering real full-contact blows, known in wrestling slang as potatoes, that broke teeth, split skin, and occasionally caused concussions. Yet fans loved it, because Hansen's matches looked more real than anyone else's. One of the most horrifying moments in wrestling history occurred during Hansen's match with Vader in Japan. Amid a flurry of wild strikes, Hansen accidentally poked Vader in the eye, so hard that it popped out of its socket. The sight was so gruesome that many thought the match would end immediately. But Vader, showing unbelievable toughness, shoved his eye back into place and finished the fight. That moment didn't just shock the crowd. It proved that when you stepped into the ring with Hansen, anything could happen. However, Hansen's most serious accident came earlier in his career. On April 26, 1976, at Madison Square Garden, he faced WWF champion Bruno Sammartino. During a body slam attempt, Hansen mistimed the move, causing Bruno to land directly on his neck, breaking it instantly. Doctors said he was lucky not to be paralyzed for life, and yet, against all odds, Bruno recovered in a matter of weeks. Hansen, devastated, could only bow his head and say, "We're all big men who know the risks when we step into that ring. I didn't mean to hurt him, but sometimes, wrestling can really kill you." Ironically, just 2 months later, Vince McMahon Sr., the father of today's Vince McMahon, convinced Bruno to face Hansen again at Shea Stadium to help revive WWF's struggling ticket sales. Still injured, Bruno returned to the ring, finished the match, and, in doing so, practically saved the company. Stan Hansen represents an era when wrestling wasn't just entertainment, it was survival. He never set out to injure anyone, but his sheer power, poor vision, and reckless intensity made him one of the most terrifying figures in WWE history. Big Man Mabel, the careless giant, who even scared The Undertaker. Nelson Frazier Jr., better known to fans as Big Man Mabel, was one of the most unique figures to ever step foot in a WWF ring during the mid-1990s. Standing over 6 feet 9 inches tall and weighing around 510 pounds, Mabel had a presence that demanded attention the moment he appeared. At first, he was part of the fun-loving tag team Men on a Mission, a colorful, hip-hop-inspired duo beloved for their energy and charisma. But Vince McMahon saw something different in him, the potential to become a monstrous heel who could help boost WWF's struggling business during a rough period. In 1995, Mabel was pushed to the main event scene, even winning the King of the Ring tournament, setting up rivalries with top names like Diesel and The Undertaker. But his meteoric rise also exposed a serious flaw. Mabel was dangerously reckless in the ring. His massive size, combined with poor control, made every move a potential hazard. In one infamous match, Mabel delivered a leg drop on The Undertaker but misjudged the landing. His heel came crashing straight down on Taker's face, fracturing his orbital bone and forcing him out of action for weeks. When he finally returned, the dead man had to wear a protective mask, a symbol of one of the most difficult phases in his career. Mabel also accidentally injured Diesel's back during another match, further testing the patience of WWF management. By 1996, Mabel was released from the company, ending a turbulent chapter in his career. Though he would later return under different personas like Viscera and Big Daddy V, fans would always remember Nelson Frazier as the clumsy and dangerous giant. A reminder that size and strength can never replace skill and safety in professional wrestling. Goldberg, the uncontrolled tank, who took down legends. When talking about the most powerful wrestlers to come out of WCW and WWE, Goldberg's name is always near the top. With a chiseled physique, explosive speed, and devastating strikes, he embodied pure dominance inside the ring. But that same power, when left unchecked, made him one of the most dangerous and unpredictable performers in wrestling history. The clearest example came at Super Showdown 2019, where Goldberg faced The Undertaker in a heavily promoted dream match. What was meant to be an epic clash between two icons quickly turned into a disaster. As was his old WCW ritual, Goldberg headbutted his locker door backstage to get hyped up, giving himself a concussion before the match even began. Entering the ring dazed, he repeatedly botched key moves, from a weak jackhammer that dropped Undertaker straight on his head to a sloppy tombstone reversal that nearly injured them both. The fact that neither man left with serious injuries that night was nothing short of a miracle. However, Goldberg's biggest tragedy occurred years earlier in WCW during his match against Bret, the Hitman Hart. A mistimed, overly stiff superkick struck Bret in the head, causing a severe concussion that never fully healed. The injury forced one of wrestling's greatest technicians to retire far too soon. Though Goldberg has apologized many times and expressed genuine remorse, Bret has never fully forgiven him for the kick that ended his legendary career. Goldberg remains a symbol of brute force and intensity, but also a painful reminder that in wrestling, danger doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes, it's the uncontrollable power of someone too strong for their own good. Ryback, the out-of-control muscle machine, who terrified his peers. When Ryback stormed into WWE with his massive frame, bulging muscles, and fiery intensity, many believed he was destined to become the next Goldberg. But instead of rising as a megastar, Ryback gained infamy for being reckless and unsafe in the ring, a performer whose power made his colleagues nervous every time they worked with him. No one described him better than CM Punk, who publicly criticized Ryback in interviews. Punk bluntly labeled him the botch guy, a wrestler who constantly messed up moves, and even claimed, "He took 20 years off my career." According to Punk, Ryback once broke his ribs and frequently botched spots so badly that they could have ended in disaster. One of the scariest moments came when Ryback threw Punk out of the ring too forcefully, causing him to land off angle and nearly injure his spine. But Punk wasn't the only one who suffered. In 2012, when WWE was pushing Ryback as a human wrecking machine, he injured Tensai, Albert, after botching his shell shock finisher, a move where he lifted opponents on his shoulders and spun them down to the mat. The poorly executed slam sidelined Tensai temporarily. Shortly afterward, Ryback struck Dolph Ziggler with an overly stiff clothesline, giving him a concussion that kept him out for weeks. Despite his intimidating look and brute strength, Ryback's reputation as a careless, overly aggressive performer grew quickly. Many in the locker room reportedly preferred to avoid working with him. Fans once called him a budget Goldberg, but in terms of danger, Ryback may have actually surpassed the man he was compared to, because stepping into the ring with him wasn't just another match, it was a gamble with your own body. Vader, the muscle storm, with power beyond control. In the 1990s, few big men combined sheer power and agility quite like Vader, real name Leon White. Standing 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighing over 400 pounds, Vader was a phenomenon, a man of enormous size who could move with the speed and precision of a cruiserweight. His ability to perform high-flying moves like the moonsault off the top rope was nothing short of astonishing. But that same raw power, when unchecked, made Vader one of the most dangerous and unpredictable wrestlers ever to set foot in a WWF ring. Vader was notorious for his stiff style, or as wrestlers call it, potato shots, meaning he often hit for real instead of pulling his punches. His blows, slams, and collisions frequently left opponents with broken teeth, cut faces, or concussions. While fans loved the realism and intensity of his matches, his co-workers saw him as a walking hazard. Word of his recklessness spread quickly backstage. Major stars like Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart reportedly refused to work long-term programs with him out of fear of injury. Shawn Michaels, who had a series of heated matches with Vader, also grew frustrated after taking several real hits during their bouts. The tension became so severe that Michaels pressured WWF management to end Vader's main event push, effectively cutting short what could have been the biggest run of his career. Ironically, Vader's own dangerous style eventually came back to haunt him. In one match, he suffered a severe injury at the hands of another notoriously reckless powerhouse, someone who would later appear on this very list of WWE's most dangerous wrestlers. A bitter twist of fate for the man once feared as the Muscle Storm, whose uncontrollable strength ultimately led to his downfall. The Steiner brothers, the brutal warriors who terrified the locker room. Scott and Rick Steiner, better known as the Steiner brothers, were one of the most dominant and feared tag teams of the 1990s. With their amateur wrestling background, sculpted physiques, and explosive offense, they earned respect for their intensity and raw power. But along with that admiration came fear, because the Steiner brothers were notorious for being too real, too rough, and often too dangerous for comfort. The Steiners became infamous for their bone-crushing suplexes that often sent opponents crashing headfirst into the mat. They didn't hold back, and the line between worked and real hits often vanished completely. One former wrestler recalled, "If they wanted you to fly, you'd fly. If they wanted you to hurt, you'd hurt." Rick and Scott didn't care who took the worst of it, as long as the match looked real. What made them even scarier was their treatment of rookies and lesser-known talent. To the Steiners, that was initiation, a brutal introduction to the realities of pro wrestling. Many wrestlers reportedly prayed just to finish a match with them without ending up in the hospital. Rick Steiner, in particular, had a reputation for crossing the line. One infamous story claims he once stabbed an opponent with a pencil during a match, leaving everyone in shock. A fellow wrestler shouted, "Rick, you know that's illegal, right?" But Rick just smirked and brushed it off as a joke. Their recklessness reached its peak when Rick accidentally broke Buff Bagwell's neck with a mistimed diving bulldog. Though Bagwell eventually recovered, the incident solidified the Steiner brothers' image as two of the most dangerous men to ever step into a wrestling ring, real-life predators in a world built on illusion. Ahmed Johnson, from trailblazer to locker room nightmare. In the mid-1990s, Ahmed Johnson was seen as a symbol of change in WWE. With his massive build, chiseled physique, and explosive fighting style, he made an immediate impact by becoming the first African-American Intercontinental Champion, a historic milestone for the company. WWE had high hopes for Johnson, viewing him as a potential future main event star. But just a few short years later, his rise came crashing down, and Ahmed Johnson became infamous as one of the most reckless and dangerous wrestlers of the decade. What doomed Johnson wasn't a lack of power or passion, it was his inability to control it. He was known for overly stiff slams and wild collisions that went far beyond scripted limits. At WrestleMania 13, Johnson faced off against Farouk, Ron Simmons, in a brutal encounter. But during the match, he botched a move so badly that it fractured Farouk's ribs and punctured his lung, sidelining him for months. Even the technically flawless Owen Hart, known for his precision and safety, wasn't spared from Johnson's carelessness. Several wrestlers recalled how Owen suffered multiple minor injuries, and even a concussion, from Johnson's misplaced strikes. Word quickly spread through the locker room. Ahmed Johnson was dangerous, and few wanted to step in the ring with him. As his reputation for being unsafe to work with grew, his career fell apart. Once pushed as a top star, Johnson soon found himself phased out of major storylines before quietly leaving WWE. What began as a groundbreaking run ended in disappointment, serving as a reminder that in WWE, brute strength alone isn't enough to build a legend. Nia Jax, the Destroyer, who accidentally created a legend. Throughout her WWE career, Nia Jax was one of the most polarizing figures on the roster. With her commanding size, raw power, and aggressive style, she stood out immediately, but that same intensity made her a lightning rod for criticism. Every time she stepped into the ring, there was a sense of unease. And the moment that forever defined her reputation came in 2018, with one infamous punch to Becky Lynch. During a chaotic pre-Survivor Series brawl, Nia struck Becky with a real, uncontrolled punch, not part of the script. The impact broke Becky's nose and caused severe facial injuries, forcing her to withdraw from her highly anticipated match against Ronda Rousey. Yet in a strange twist of fate, the image of a bloodied but defiant Becky Lynch became one of the most iconic moments in modern WWE history, launching her rise to superstardom as the Man. Ironically, Nia Jax's mistake created one of WWE's biggest stars. But that wasn't her first backstage controversy. A year earlier, in 2017, Bayley, one of WWE's most beloved stars, was injured during a match on Raw when Jax botched a throw, severely damaging Bayley's shoulder and forcing her to miss her title match at SummerSlam against Alexa Bliss. Many fans believe that moment stalled Bayley's momentum for months. Though Jax repeatedly insisted she never meant to hurt anyone, the "unsafe" label stuck with her for the rest of her career. Nia Jax remains a perfect example of wrestling's strange irony. Someone who could be both a backstage nightmare and, unintentionally, the spark that created an all-time legend. Alberto Del Rio, a brilliant talent with hidden danger. Alberto Del Rio was once seen as the embodiment of a perfect WWE superstar, aristocratic, confident, and technically gifted with a strong lucha libre foundation. He captured major titles like the WWE Championship and World Heavyweight Championship, becoming one of the company's main faces in the early 2010s. Yet behind the spotlight lay a darker reputation. Del Rio was known backstage as someone many didn't feel safe stepping into the ring with. Despite his refined in-ring skill, Del Rio had a habit of hitting too hard. His strikes often landed with excessive force, resulting in serious injuries for several opponents. The most infamous example was Christian. In what should have been a routine match, Del Rio delivered a stiff kick to Christian's head, causing a severe concussion. The injury never fully healed, ultimately forcing Christian into early retirement, a tragic end for one of WWE's most beloved veterans. But that wasn't an isolated incident. In another match, Del Rio accidentally knocked Daniel Bryan unconscious after a mistimed grappling exchange. The moment sparked speculation among fans and wrestlers alike. Could that blow have contributed to Bryan's later career-threatening concussion issues? While no official link was ever confirmed, many in the locker room admitted they felt uneasy working with Del Rio, unsure when one of his moves might cross the line from performance to real harm. Alberto Del Rio stands as a clear example of WWE's darker side, where brilliance and danger can coexist. He had everything needed to become a legend, but his recklessness and stiff in-ring style left behind a reputation forever tied to one phrase: unsafe to work with. Seth Rollins, the architect of Raw and the finisher that carried a curse. Seth Rollins has long been regarded as one of WWE's most complete superstars. Fast, technical, and an exceptional storyteller who can pull audiences into every match he's in. But alongside his reputation as the architect of the new generation comes a darker shadow, a history of devastating in-ring accidents that left several opponents seriously injured. His notorious move, the buckle bomb, in which Rollins hoists his opponent and launches them into the turnbuckle, is the perfect example. It's a visually stunning and powerful maneuver, but even the slightest mistiming can spell disaster. In 2016, during the Universal Championship match, Rollins delivered a buckle bomb that dislocated Finn Balor's shoulder, forcing him to relinquish the title and miss over 6 months of action right after his biggest career win. However, the most tragic incident happened a year earlier, at Night of Champions 2015. Facing the legendary Sting, Rollins executed the same move, and that moment effectively ended Sting's career. The veteran landed awkwardly against the turnbuckle, suffering a severe spinal injury that kept him out of the ring for nearly 6 years. Although Sting later clarified that Rollins meant no harm, that image remains one of the most haunting moments in modern WWE history. Following those events, WWE temporarily banned Rollins from using the buckle bomb. Many defended him, saying the injuries were simply the risks of the business and often came from bad landings rather than Rollins's execution. Yet for others, the move became a symbol of dangerous beauty, thrilling to watch, but terrifying in its consequences. Seth Rollins, despite his skill and professionalism, stands as proof that in wrestling, one wrong second can end a career forever. The Undertaker, the dark legend and the chilling accidents behind the myth. For over 3 decades, The Undertaker wasn't just the dead man. He was the immortal symbol of WWE, a figure both revered and feared. With his deliberate yet punishing style, Taker brought an aura of dread and respect every time he stepped into the ring. But behind that legend lie moments that made fans and wrestlers alike wonder. Was The Undertaker also one of the most dangerous men to ever wrestle? One of the earliest and most talked about incidents occurred in the early 1990s, when Taker delivered his signature tombstone piledriver to Hulk Hogan. Hogan later claimed the move seriously injured his neck and left long-term damage. While many believed Hogan exaggerated the story, it still cemented The Undertaker's image at the time as someone whose power could truly hurt even the biggest stars. Then came another infamous moment in 1998 during his match with Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. After taking a back body drop from Taker, Michaels landed awkwardly, suffering a severe back injury. Though he finished the match and later competed at WrestleMania 14, The injury forced him to step away from wrestling for 4 years. It wasn't directly Taker's fault, but it added to his reputation as a competitor whose intensity could leave lasting scars. The Undertaker never intended to injure anyone. He simply wrestled with authenticity, making every strike, slam, and expression feel real. But that same intensity and physical power made every opponent acutely aware. One wrong move could cost them everything. That's why The Undertaker remains one of the most respected, yet most intimidating figures in wrestling history. A legend who embodied both the beauty and brutality of the sport. From seasoned legends to modern-day superstars, each of them has proven that great power often comes with great risk. Who do you think is the most dangerous wrestler of them all? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere so you won't miss the next thrilling story.